listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Let's go, SEC fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Just a Sec Pod right here on the War Report Network, man. Today, we're going to take a look at my list of the top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC. And before we get into it, man, because I know everyone's going to agree with my list, right? This is not a NFL GM draft board, who I would draft first, all that kind of stuff. It's just the top 5 quarterbacks, the guys that I think are playing the best football right now in the SEC. And we're going to go ahead and get started right here with number 1, Mr. Jalen Milroe, quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide. He is currently completing 73.4% of his passes for 1,274 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. I just think Jalen's the real deal. I think he's obviously the threat that he has, that he poses with his legs as well. He can make a lot of things happen. He can extend the plays. He's got the big-time arm. And a lot of times the knock on these athletic quarterbacks is they're not accurate, right? Well, 73.4% of his passes, balled out versus Georgia, really kind of helped his team with a comeback win versus South Florida. I know that they just lost to Vanderbilt, but I would say that they scored 35 points and didn't have the ball a whole lot. Vanderbilt dominated that game over 40 minutes of time of possession. He didn't get the ball a whole lot, still put up 35 points in the short amount of time that he did have the ball. That Vanderbilt offense just kept the ball away from Jalen Milroe, and that was part of their game plan. That speaks to the kind of player that Jalen is, right? Vanderbilt said, we are going to come out here and control the clock and not let Jalen get the ball, because when Jalen gets the ball, he's the real deal. He's the problem. He's a clutch player. He proved that last year in the SEC championship game, if you go back to the Iron Bowl. But I just think that this year, Kevin DeBoer and that staff are doing a great job. And right now, Jalen Milroe, the dark horse for the Heisman. I know, again, that the loss to Vanderbilt puts a little bit of a damper on that. But if he comes right back this week and that's a good performance for South Carolina, which I expect him to, I know South Carolina's got a good defensive line. But Jalen's up to the task, man. He shows you everything that you need in an SEC quarterback. He's a leader. He'll stand in the pocket. He'll take the tough hits. And I think he makes guys around him better. I think that really, if you go back to last year, the mental fortitude he showed, getting benched and not playing in that South Florida game, and then coming back the next week. And from then on, he's just been a different player. And I like what Kalen DeBoer and that staff have done with him. So Jalen Milroe right now, in my opinion, playing the best quarterback in the SEC. Let's see if he can continue that down the stretch, but I think that he's off to a hot start. Number 2 on the list, Mr. Carson Beck. And if I was an NFL GM, this might be the guy that I would take if I needed a quarterback. Completing 65.8% of his passes, 1,359 yards, 12 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Listen, Carson Beck, those 3 interceptions all came versus Alabama. Other than that, he's been clean. He's been solid. And I was really, really impressed with what he showed in the second half of that Bama game, right? Coming back, putting his team in the ball game despite all the turnovers he had early. He shook them off, and that's a sign of a good quarterback, a guy that the adversity doesn't faze him. He continues to lead his team. He continues to fight, stay in the game, give his team a chance to win. And obviously, since Carson Beck has been the starter at Georgia, he's been lights out, man. He's been super efficient. I like the moxie he has in the pocket, the ability to read the defenders, read his progressions. If he has to, he gets to his check down. And again, I know the 3 interceptions stood out because they were on the big stage, but it didn't bother him. It didn't rattle him. He stayed in there. He kept playing good football. And that's the only game he's thrown any interceptions. So he's doing his thing. Carson Beck, accurate. Just everything about him screams NFL starting quarterback, in my opinion. I like everything about Carson Beck. I think that he is playing the second best football from the quarterback position in the SEC right now. And like I said, if I was drafting a guy, this might be the guy that I'd take number 1. So right now, I got Carson Beck coming in at number 2. As we get on down the list here to number 3, I got the Nuss Bus, baby. Garrett Nussmeier coming in at number 3, completing 69.7% of the passes, 1,652 yards, 15 tutties to 4 interceptions. Kind of a gunslinger, right? You know, he might throw some interceptions. He might get his team in trouble at times, and then he's going to make that play, that wow play every now and then. Definitely, the textbook definition of a gunslinger, in my opinion. And right now, LSU is developing a reputation. Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, over there playing for the Washington Commanders, one of the best quarterbacks through the first 5 weeks of the NFL, not just best rookies, one of the best quarterbacks, period. I'm not sure what he did Sunday, but I know going into Sunday, Jaden was completing over 80% of his passes. So LSU, longtime DBU, lately been known as QBU. And Garrett is definitely continuing that tradition, man. I like everything about this kid as well. And what I want to see this weekend, they got the big matchup coming up with another quarterback who will make his appearance on our list momentarily. But I think that Garrett, I just want to see him in a big time game. You know, the USC game, first game of the year. He played well, not the best, but I thought he was solid. And so let's see what he can. That was the first game of the year, though. So I want to see what he does now as the season goes on. Still got big tests coming up with Alabama. Big test coming up this weekend with Ole Miss. I think he's up to the challenge. I think he's going to perform. I know he's got a nice receiving core around him. They got a nice system, but Garrett can make every single throw. He's got all the arm talent in the world. Not scared to put the ball down the field. And I like that, man. I like a kid that's going to come out there and play football and not be scared to make the throws and not be scared to put the ball down the field and give his receivers a chance to go up and get it. And when you got a guy like Lacey, the wide receiver over there at LSU, hey, just get the ball up there and he'll go find it. Garrett's fun, man. Garrett's a fun player to watch play. Waited his turn there at LSU, and I think that so far as a starter, he's making the most of it. You know, almost completing 70% of your passes for 1,652 yards right there, brother. Like, you're doing your thing. So very, very impressive start to his first season as a QB1 down there on the Bayou. And again, big matchup coming up this weekend. I got my eyes on Garrett Nussmeier. I can't wait to see what he does this weekend in a big game versus the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, I'm sure this one won't lead to any controversy, but I'm going with the Texas quarterback room. Because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I think Quint Ewers is one of the top 5, but I can't say that he's been playing the best quarterback. And then I look at Arch Manning's numbers and they're looking pretty solid. So maybe this should go to Steve Sarkisian, right? But Quint Ewers, who will be back this weekend for the Red River Shootout there in the Cotton Bowl, cannot wait for that game. Completing 73.4% of his passes, 691 yards, 8 tutties to 2 picks. And then he gets hurt, which Quint Ewers often does. And then in comes Mr. Arch Manning, completing 70.5% of his passes, 901 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So whoever's the quarterback there at Texas, Sark is just finding a way to get production out of his quarterback room. And I know a lot of SEC teams, I'm the fan of one, that would love to have either one of these guys. Both these guys, absolute ballers, leaders of their team. There's some dogs, man. Quint Ewers is a dog. Arch Manning is a dog. And I look at both of these guys, and they got all the intangibles on top of all the physical tools. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these cats are playing NFL football really soon. So when you got 2 NFL quarterbacks, in my opinion, in your QB room, and both of them have played significant time, and both of them have looked well, so I got to roll with just both of them, man. I got to go with this room. So give me Quint Ewers, Arch Manning, the whole entire Texas quarterback room, well, at least the QB1 and QB2 there, as the number 4 quarterback in the country. I know, or in the SEC, excuse me. I know that's probably going to be a bit of a controversial take, but I just didn't know where to go with this one, man. I just think both of them are playing good football, and whoever the Texas quarterback is, they're productive. They're productive, and I can't knock that. So big time matchup this weekend versus Oklahoma. Quint Ewers will be stepping back into the starting role. Can Quint Ewers stay healthy? That's the big time question for him. I'm praying, I'm hoping that he can. But if I'm a Texas fan, if he can't, then 1-6 can make some plays right. Arch Manning is doing his thing. And I would feel good about this if I was a Texas fan. Not that you ever want a guy to get hurt. You never want your starting quarterback to get hurt. But it could be a blessing in disguise. Let's say that Quint Ewers stays healthy the rest of the year. We're praying that he does, right? Let's say that he stays healthy the rest of the year. Well, man, Arch Manning got some good run, didn't he? He got some good reps. He got some SEC starts and all that kind of stuff. So just really impressed with Steve Sarkisian. This is really full credit to Sark, the system that he's built there in Austin, Texas. They're doing a great job. They're fun to watch play. He gets the most out of his guys. So big shout out to that Texas quarterback room there. And and Arch Manning, the maturity that he's displayed in handling this situation this week. They're going back to Quinn Ewers, even though you played well. The name on the back of his jersey, he could play the spoiled brat role. He could do all that, but he hasn't. And anybody that knows the Manning family and has followed them for a long time, like all of us college football fans, especially in the SEC, have, we wouldn't expect nothing less, right? Classic family, class act guy. So just really impressive to me the way that both of these guys have operated it and stepped up for their team at different times when they had to. So big shout out again to Steve Sarkisian there in Texas. All right, number 5, Jackson Dart. And hey, we're going to do this list again in a couple weeks, and he might jump up to number 2, number 3. Hell, he might jump up to number 1. He's completing 63.4% of his passes, 2,100 yards on the dot, 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now, the numbers pop, but this isn't just a numbers game. So we'll do a little deep dive, and I'm going to tell you why I have him at number 5 and not higher, even though very strong likelihood that as the season goes on, he will jump up. But right now, I'm kind of looking at this Kentucky game where he completed 18 for 27, 261 yards and 1 touchdown. It wasn't bad, right? Those aren't bad numbers, but it wasn't great. His team only scored 17 points, and he missed a couple of throws. And if you're going to be that guy, then you need to elevate your team over the Kentucky Wildcats. That was a tough loss for Ole Miss. So maybe it kind of sounds like I'm punishing him for his overall team performance, but they scored 7 points in the first quarter, 0 in the second. They got 10 in the third and 0 in the fourth, and lost that game 20-17 to Kentucky. So you enter the fourth quarter, tight ball game versus Kentucky, and you're not able to finish the deal. You're not able to get the win. He had plenty of times to do it. And then when we fast forward to the very next week, in a game that Ole Miss did win, it did win handily versus South Carolina. His stat line on the day was 14 for 27, 285 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He did add 8 carries for 44 yards on the ground. So I like Jackson Dart. I like his game. The reason I have him at number 5 is these stats right now. He's had 1 touchdown pass the last 2 games. So 12 of these touchdowns were versus inferior competition. So I want to see him in the big moment this week. If Jackson Dart can go into Baton Rouge at night, put up numbers, and lead his team to a victory, hell, he might be number 2 on this list in a couple weeks. I think he's got all the potential in the world, and I think you can hear my voice. I kind of didn't even want to put him at 5. It's just these last couple games, man, when the competition stepped up, you haven't quite been what you were versus the cupcake competition. So I know he's got it in him. I know that he's got a coach that can dial it up for him. I just want to see it. And I think we will. I think when we do this list at the end of the season, I do believe Jackson Dart won't finish 5. But right now, based off of the way he played last week and the week before, and he wasn't bad in either one of his performances, but just wasn't great either. So I'm going to put you at 5, Jackson, knowing you'll probably shoot up because I believe in Jackson Dart. I believe in Lane Kiffin. But show me this weekend. Show me this weekend in a big-time moment. That's what I want to see from Jackson Dart. That's the next step for him and his game and his career and hell for the Ole Miss program in general, right? So show me something this weekend, Rebels. Show me something, Jackson Dart. Go out there. LSU's defense will give it to you, right? You're gonna have some guys wide open if we know anything about the LSU secondary. So hit those plays. Their leading wide receiver, questionable. If they come into this game without their leading wide receiver, who was the bulk of their production, and he's still able to eat, he's still able to get the other guys involved, and he comes out of Death Valley, even if they lose, if he just balling out and does his thing, that's going to tell me a lot about what I want to see from Jackson Dart, number 2, right there in Oxford, Mississippi. So that's my top 5 list, guys, right now, just how they're playing. Leave in the comments your top 5. Tell me how dumb and stupid my list is if you don't agree with it. And, hey, this could change, right? We're going to have one of the best weekends of college football coming up that we've had in a long time. A lot of close games, a lot of games that we expect to be close this weekend in the SEC. So I'm fired up for it. Let's see how these quarterbacks perform. I'm excited to see how Quinn Ewers steps back in. Big-time rivalry matchup. Arch hasn't been playing bad. How does that go? I just spoke about what I want to see from Jackson Dart. Jalen Milroe, can you bounce back? South Carolina does have a solid defense. They do have a really good defensive line. So Carson Beck, can you keep it rolling? I'm excited. Nico, I love Nico at Tennessee. Can he crack this top 5 list, right? Before the season, I would have had Brady Cook in there. Boy, is he struggling. Connor Wegman, as he put together a couple weeks to get on this list. So there's guys that aren't on this list that you're looking at and you're like, all right, Taylor Green at Arkansas, if he could get his completion percentage up, he could make an appearance. He could knock on the door at least. He's playing some good football. He's got to get his completion percentage up. So, good quarterback play going on in the SEC right now, man. And if you like this kind of content, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel right here at Just a Sec. Follow me on Twitter at TWR_SEC. And we'll be back later in the week, man, with some more content. Appreciate you guys. I'm out.